Welcome back to Skywatch TV. We continue our discussion on the new book, Zeitgeist 2025. And in studio with us today, Josh Peck, who is also a contributing author to the book. And Josh, right before the break, I indicated when we came back, we were going to have you explain how the Essenes actually looked at the year 2025 as the possible final age of man.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is absolutely phenomenal, the time that we're living in and what we're about to enter into. I believe that this is the most prophetic time that human history has ever seen. And we're about to head into that in just a little over 4 years. So the Essenes were a faction of Jewish people around the time of Christ. We're aware of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, but we don't know a whole lot about the Essenes. Most Christians have never heard of them. But they were the keepers of the Dead Sea Scrolls. So what we've been able to piece together from the Dead Sea Scrolls tells us about the Essenes themselves, their culture, and more importantly, their prophecy. Because at that time, the Pharisees were saying the gift of prophecy was done and over with. You know, that gift had ceased. Does that sound familiar in our day today?
Right.
But according to the Essenes, the gift of prophecy never ceased, and they were still getting prophecy. So we get that in the Dead Sea Scrolls. They had an amazing prophetic calendar.
They did, and a track record as well.
Yeah, extremely accurate. Another thing that we're told as Christians is that when Jesus came, he took everyone by surprise. No one knew that that was going to be the fulfillment of all the messianic prophecies, that it was going to happen that way. Wrong. The Pharisees and Sadducees didn't know, but the Essenes knew.
I gotcha.
Yeah, we have the Dead Sea Scrolls that were written at least 200 years before Christ, some of them even longer than that. But they predict that the Messiah would come, would be God incarnate, would die for the sins of man and forgiveness. The only piece that they didn't really have was how Gentiles would be incorporated in the church and all that. So that's laid out in Ephesians 3. So there was that mystery that had yet to be revealed after Christ. But before Christ, that's the kind of Messiah they were looking for. This is why, for some, when you read the Gospels, it's like, man, some of these people, they get saved so easily. It doesn't take them much at all. But then others are really stubborn. And it's because there was this kind of inter-faction war between the Pharisees and the Essenes. Pharisees had their theology. They had their expectation of the Messiah, which was, he would be a military leader. He would just be human. He would die in a battle and then basically give power over to the Pharisees. But the Essenes had a completely different view. So for hundreds of years, they were battling that out. Jesus comes on the scene, and of course, we find out that the Essenes were correct. Jesus even quotes Dead Sea Scrolls that were not included in the Bible to John the Baptist when he was in jail. There's just amazing revelations there. But
we've done shows on that. They many predictions with laser precision.
Yes.
So for people that aren't familiar who the Essenes were.
Yeah, so that kind of tells us who they are. But what's amazing is they didn't only predict things in their day, in their age.
They also looked at 2025, didn't they?
So according to their calendar, they had their own calendar. They said that was the original solar calendar that God gave to Adam. And the Pharisees were using a paganized lunar calendar that actually Orthodox Jews still use today. But according to the Essenes, the original calendar was laid out all of human history in 7,000 years, and it was split up into ages. So the age that they were living in was called the Age of Torah, and that ended in 75 AD. Each age is 2,000 years. 75 AD was the beginning of our age, actually called in the Dead Sea Scrolls the Age of Grace. They actually knew that. They knew that much about our age to actually call it that. Age of Grace. So that's what we're living in now. They also split up these ages into jubilees, so 50-year segments. The last Jubilee of the Age of Torah, that's when everything happened with Jesus. It would have been between the years 25 AD and 75 AD. So you have the whole ministry of Jesus plus the destruction of the temple within that time. In our time, our final Jubilee is going to start in 2025 AD and last until 2075 AD. We don't know exactly where the tribulation is going to fall in that because there's a lot of things that have to happen. You could have the tribulation really early on, just like Jesus came early on in the final Jubilee of the Age of Torah. We could have the same thing, and there could still be decades of things that need to be put in place before the actual start of the 1,000-year millennial reign of Christ. So there's lots of different ways that could play out, but there's something special about that last 50 years that we're about to enter into.
When Dr. Heiser was here recently, I asked him, I can't remember if it was on air or off air, did he believe that John the Baptist was an Essene? And he said that it was possible. He certainly knew the Essenes. Well, our mutual friend Ken Johnson, I was on the phone with him a couple of days ago. I asked him the same question. He said not only was he an Essene, he said he was a specific one who had been predicted as a forerunner of the Messiah, because they prophesied one would come who would be the voice crying in the wilderness. That was an Essene prophecy.
Well, it was the whole reason the Essenes even existed, was they went out to Qumran, to the wilderness, to fulfill that prophecy in Isaiah about preparing a way. What's amazing, too, the Essenes called themselves the Way 200 years before Christ. So when Paul in the book of Acts is saying, you know, we're followers of the Way, who they call a sect and all that, he's not talking about this new thing called Christianity. It was that, but it was a more ancient order of Essenes that called themselves the Way.